So let's start. I'm going to start this show. And actually, this is one of the first shows that we have, Bill. And it's a pleasure for us to have you here. And let's start introducing our first guest today. And it's Bill Dallas, and is one of the icons in the mortgage industry. He's a mover and shaker for the last 30 years. I think that Bill doesn't need a lot of introduction, but I'm going to talk about him and his trajectory in the last 30 plus years. He started in the mortgage business when he was 20
12.
years
When I
old.
was 12. Yeah. No.
Started a company, First Franklin Mortgage, in his 20s and sold it many times.
hmm
Actually, later on, he also was part of over 40 M&As transactions in his career, over 30 years of experience in the mortgage industry. He was named on the top 100 graduate inducted into the Business Hall of Fame, co-founded Dallas Hamilton Center, co-founder and board member and chairman emeritus of Oaks Christian School, former CEO of Finance of America, which, by the way, he helped to take it public, former CEO of many other mortgage banks out there, co-founder of Cloud Verga, is a digital mortgage point of sale platform, chairman of Dallas Capital, which he founded in the last few years. And most important, I would say, in my heart, he has advised and mentored hundreds of business entrepreneurs in the last few years. He's also a family man, has 5 kids, Christian, and very devoted, especially to his family and his beliefs. Bill Dallas, welcome.
Hey, Miguel. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for joining us. And let's just jump in because there's a lot of questions that I have for you. But one of the questions is if you can start giving us a little bit of how do you get the inspiration and the motivation on a daily basis to do what you do? You have accomplished basically everything in life. How do you find that inspiration?
Well, I think a couple things. I come from humble beginnings, right? So there was passion and inspiration to be successful and get out and be successful doing something. My mom was from West Virginia. My dad was from Ohio. We lived on the river, sort of a J.D. Vance, who's now the Vice President of the United States. Sort of a story like that, where you come from humble beginnings. The good news was, for me, was my parents were both highly educated. So they both, my dad was a school superintendent, my mother was a teacher and then a principal. So it was like I was lucky enough to be raised to know that education could be my way out, I guess, if you will. And I was an athlete. So and we moved a lot as a family, as my dad. So I think all of that. My mom gave me a little sheet of, it was like art cardboard paper that I'd filled out. I still have it. I've got it right here, and it's what I wanted to do when and I had 3 things on this sheet of paper that I drew, little stick figures. Right, this is in kindergarten and first grade, and it was I wanted to either be a professional. So I had a professional football player. I wanted to be like Jimmy Brown. I wanted to be an army man, or I wanted to be a banker. And I didn't even know what a banker was. I had no idea. I just wanted to be rich, right? I just wanted to have money. And so I went about, you know, like most people, right? Just banging your head against an athlete in high school, great athlete in high school, good athlete in college, and then just ended up, went to law school at Santa Clara. But through that, I was happy enough. I meet like you, right? You meet somebody in the real estate business, and they sort of suck you in. And so I learned early on about the miracle of owning real estate. And that has been my inspiration really for 40 years. I love everything about it. I love what it can do. I love how it builds community, how it builds family. For all my kids, they've all, the earlier you own real estate, the better off you are. And what the linchpin to that has always been mortgage finance. And so when I was relocated, I actually was hired by I was training. So after I got out of college in Ohio, I went to work in the summer. I was going to go to law school there, didn't know what I wanted to do. And the gal I was dating, her parents were realtors and just started. So they asked me to go look at training and training programs and different things. So I did a deeper dive. My dad obviously was an educator, so he sort of turned me on to how to retrain adults. And so I built this training program over the summer, was speaking at an event. Guy from California sees me and brings me out and hires me to run his business. We were the largest real estate company in San Jose at the
Wow.
time. So it was like when I was 20, I didn't know shit of what I was doing. But what I didn't understand or know, I made up with energy and enthusiasm. And I was really good at it. So I think
And until today.
that got me into where we are today, right? Which is,
Yeah.
how do you finance the miracle of what you want to do?
Yeah.
And because interest rates were 20 when I started, it was very hard. So you learned how to be creative pretty fast.
Yeah, I know, and I have to say that even 30 years later or 35 years later, you have such an energy all the time, like few people that I know. And that motivation about helping people is just amazing how it transforms into so much energy that you have. So now, obviously, we all know that you have been a leader in many different companies and you have transformed the industry, the mortgage industry. So, looking at the current landscape, what do you think is the biggest mistake that leaders in our industry are making today?
Yeah, I call it the founder's trap. You've heard me talk about it, right? I think the biggest mistake is that you're not a trained executive, right? You get promoted because you're smarter, faster, quicker, better than the person in front of you or around you, right? So there is no training, there is no development programs. And so I think what happens is the founder then grows and it's lonely at the top of a mortgage company and you become a CEO or you become a president. You can put it on your card. Actually, you can say I'm president, and yet you've got zero skills. So one of the things that I spent my time doing was trying to figure out how I could become an effective leader. And and I've shared it with you guys, right, with the DCs and Jerry Faust and what they call organizational therapy or organizational therapists. And I learned early on that I needed training and development if I was going to be a leader and understand how to lead. I mean, I have attributes of it. I speak well. I do have high energy. I'm thoughtful. I like people. I understand that I work for them. They don't work for me. I mean, there's some things that lend you to be likable, but to
Yeah.
be a leader, you have to be able to bring all that together. And in mortgage, right, like in most businesses, it's either sales or ops, or like in football, it's offense and defense and special teams and all these different things that you can do. Bringing that together, I was trained. So I searched for a person, and we call it the founder's trap because every founder of every company gets to a point where it's almost like the Peter principle, where you get to a point that, DCs and most leaders call it adolescence, where you just can't get out of it and your business isn't
Right.
mature and can't grow. So
Yeah.
I think that training helped me become a leader and then help me understand that I work for my leaders and how do I develop them and work with them and then bring them in and take talented people and put them, I always call it the tip of the spear, put them into where everybody that they touch in the organization understands the mission, the objective, the goals, and most of it is the culture of the organization. And that served me
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Bill, I heard you in some of your interviews before, because I think it's important that, I mean, we all have mentors in our lives. And you mentioned about a gentleman by the name of Faust. I think it was Jerry Faust, and that he gave you a few words of advice in your career and help you to run organizations better. Can you give us a little bit more a background about that specific moment that helped you shape you as a leader?
Yeah. I mean, I was lost and making good time. It's like my business was, I'd push this big, the way Jerry used to say it, I'd push this big elephant up the ladder and then it would come back down. I'd try to grow and then, and the company wasn't focused in a way. And the way I said it was you almost had, three or four three there's always three doors in a business, right? There's the yes, the no, and the maybe, and people search it out. So how do you build an organization? So when I was at a chairman's conference for the Mortgage Bankers Association. I think it was in San Diego, and and a guy came to speak, and it sounded to me like he was speaking directly to me. And so I searched him out. Seemed like most other people didn't. His name was Jerry Faust. He passed away a couple of years ago. I'm close with he and his family. And Jerry, I said, dude, this is where we are in our organization. He says, this is what I do. I can help you. Brought him in. He taught us the DC's methodology. And from that point forward, we were a rocket ship. And
Wow.
a lot of it's just people. I mean, your business really people. And if people are committed and they understand what they're going to do, they serve other people, your client, really well. And I think you have to. And so what he said to me was, you're the problem. So solve it. And I went, wow, that's sort of harsh, right? I have that president on my card, but I suck at being a president. How do I do that better? And he basically spent the next 20 years um, helping us.
Right. So I know that one of your characteristics, when someone meets Bill Dallas, he's a very straightforward leader. He doesn't like to go around the bushes. You are as straightforward as anyone can be, and because you're so passionate about helping people, what would you say to those newcomers, managers, brokers, or owners in
Mm-hmm.
our industry, especially young people?
Mm-hmm.
What would be your best word of advice that you can give them in today's industry?
I think you have to listen and you have to find mentors and people that can help you and are willing to help you. So you're sort of building your team and the people around you who will help make you successful. So I mean, the way it worked for me was I would I would just lop on to somebody like Miguel and say, Miguel, I just need your help. I mean, here's my business. Here's what I'm doing. I'm frail. I think you have to be a bit vulnerable, and yet most people struggle because of their ego. And obviously, we all have a huge ego of we think great things about ourselves, most of us. And I think what ends up happening is you don't build enough other people around you who could help you, and then you're not honest with the skills that you don't have. It's like in Faust, I like it because he says every issue is a beach ball, right? And if you look at that beach ball, there's a top and a bottom. From the top, you can't see the bottom, right?
Right.
So that's just, and mortgage. Mortgage is a good example, right? Because mortgage goes It's the top of the beach ball and it's the bottom of the beach ball all the time. And you can go macro, you got macro issues, you got micro issues, you've got then the issues that what he calls and what I've always said are really normal organizational issues. Well, if you can eliminate the normal organizational issues and focus on the client and the customer and your strategy, then you can win. But if you're spending
Right.
all your time inside the organization trying to fix things, or make it work, you can't get to the important things. And so, Jerry, I think for most, like now I'm a consultant, right? Or I now am a mentor. That's what I do. Well, I know how I felt in my early years is it was like, I don't need these people. I can do this. I'm the smartest tool in the shed. I can make it happen. And I think what I learned was we all need help, right? It's almost like being a parent to an adult kid. Okay, where did that training go? Nowhere. And so the only training you have is your pops or your moms or your community that's around you. We could all use training on how to be a better parent. That led me, one of the things that's been one of the greatest things I've created in my life is Oaks Christian School. Right? It's a big Christian school in California, in a very tough place, right? You might as well be Amish, right, in California half the time. So when you look at it, I think what I figured out was, how can I impact the biggest number of people on a daily basis? And it is by creating a school that has a mission that's faith-based, but it's also a mission on how to, with arts, academics, athletics, it's how do I take these kids and turn them into critically thinking great leaders that you can
That's
depend on.
awesome. That's amazing. Um, in your view, I know that technology is the topic, especially in the last few years. Everyone talks about technology and what's coming next and AI. However, people is always going to be as important as technology. It's a hybrid. What would you say to those people out there, leaders, in regards to integrating new technology into their company?
Yeah, I think you have to, right? You have to innovate. Your business is stale. Your business is losing ground every day. It has competitors that want to kick the shit out of you. It has all these things that are going on to it, right? So part of understanding technology is, how do your clients, at least in our space, I spent all my time trying to figure out, okay, what do we really want to build in a digital economy, right, that's growing? Well, if you think about it, and you guys know it, Miguel, even with how we try to serve at PMG or how we try to serve our clients, some of our clients are natives, digital natives. Some have no freaking clue and want to call. Some just want to meet. So my goal with it was, how do I use human contact with technology to create an experience that's far better than what they would have otherwise? Not, hey, why don't you fill out an app online, or why don't you go down this path? We deal with the largest single financial investment that most families ever make. And I'm good at it, right? As a trusted advisor, what I was good at with my clients was telling them no, telling them yes, telling them this is what you're supposed to do. But it's a little bit like Malcolm Gladwell's book. I think it was in Tipping Point or one of them, or Outlier, where an expert is somebody who has got 10 to 15,000 hours of real work in that space. And so I've probably got a couple million hours in this business dealing with real issues. So when you take technology, how do you get that? How do you empower the trusted advisor to be really much better as a result of technology. Now, there are some things like in AI. I mean, look, the problem with mortgage is it's government owned, right? It's Fannie, it's Freddie, it's FHA, it's VA, it's USDA, it's DPA. We got all these acronyms, we got all this crap. But at the end of the day, we're selling loans into the federal government with a government guarantee. America is different than probably many other countries as a result of it. It's probably part of our secret sauce. And it's also, I mean, it's like one of my jokes or my worst lines was, I'm from the government and I'm here to help you. Well, they don't help that often. And so, and it's old, right? Our guidelines and rules are old. So I think what you have to do in mortgage is, how do you balance the trusted advisor and human contact with this archaic structure that we sell into, and still take advantage of some of the things, mobile, texting, online, AI. I mean, because there are things that we could do much better and much faster. And that when I came out of '06, '07, and '08, I said, this is going to be the largest opportunity in mortgage ever, because we just came off a severe, and most people in our world had never seen a credit event like that, right? You'd have to go back to the Great Depression before you'd see this great recession. The interesting thing about about the Great Recession in '06, '07, '08, is 92% of the people paid. So only 8% of the people really suffered. But when they suffered, they went all the way to bankruptcy and default and lost their house and all of that, which isn't how it normally works. So I think what I learned from it coming out of the event was, people are going to be punished. I mean, America loves to punish people. They love to, talk and blame people. And so what you got was that the broker and the bank were put on trial and executed. And so when I'm looking at that, I'm thinking, okay, what is going to then be the big opportunity going forward? And building Skyline and New Leaf, which ended up being how I got the Finance of America and running that business and taking it public, was, we have to create a next generation mortgage company, right? So what is that? And it has to use technology, and it has to infuse that, has to be an early adopter for our LOs and brokers, who actually have to then go apply it to each client. And as you know, right, it's a sticky, post-it, checklist, messed up business that with a bunch of integrations that try to work anything from, and you think about it, right? You take an application, you think it'd be simple just to put the stupid thing in the LOS, in the loan origination system, but you have input people, disclosure desk, appraisal desk, LOAs, processors. You got all these people suddenly. And I tried to eliminate it.
Right. What I see, the human element is always, in my opinion, the most important piece, because at the end, technology, you can have the best piece of technology in front of you, but if that human element does not integrate correctly, is not trained properly, does not understand technology, it's not going to have
It
results, right?
doesn't work.
Right. And I see it very often that you see technologies coming with new versions and new different softwares, and the human element doesn't catch up to it. And at the end, the results are not as everyone expected. And you have the other piece of it, which is cost.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just getting really expensive, and the technologies.
Well, you look
Uh,
at technology has I think regulation and technology and the lack of integration and the lack of a system is taking the cost of a mortgage from $2,000 a loan to $15,000 a loan. Okay,
well, that's
that
that's
that is
reality.
not possible. I mean, something's wrong.
And unfortunately, technology has not helped to
No.
bring costs down. Technology is expensive, but let's go to the human element. Obviously, we know how important it is to have good talent, and you always talk about how lucky were you selecting the right team and be able to work with people that you like to work. What advice can you give about I mean, selecting the right talent, especially in this industry. Or can you just share with us any type of experience about selecting and shaping your team to be successful?
Yeah, there's two. People are the most important piece, right? There's two things that you got to have with people. You've got to have the right people in the right seat. And what I see in most businesses is it's, as you know, Fausch uses this PAE&I, where you're a producer, administrator, entrepreneur, and integrator, and you're big in one, you're not in another. And so one of the things that, and I hate labeling those things, so I use them pretty much. I mean, I'm never going to put a I'm never going to put a person who wants to think great thoughts and not implement things into a job that has to produce. So the first thing is, I think, recognizing people. So what I think is important is, if a person has 50% of what you want and need, you should promote them from within and train them and keep people. So you should have this constant group of people that you're developing and leading and growing. And there's some key knockout factors that I look at before I bring them in, right? I mean, you could start with felonies and misdemeanors and things that are like normal, but I'm looking more for I'm going to say it's a type of person. And what I found was an easy way. Now I'm going to tell you the secret sauce. I mean, most people I don't tell, right? Because it's my secret sauce. I only really hired athletes and cheerleaders to start. And I found them while I was going to law school at Santa Clara. Then I went, ooh, I'm starting to accumulate some of the best people on the planet, and they all express themselves well. They work hard. They've proven that they're either an athlete or they like being in front of people. They enjoy it. And then I started teaching. So what I learned was, I'm going to start teaching classes. And so I started teaching classes at De Anza College, started all the real estate programs at De Anza, the largest community college in California, and I real estate principles and finance, two classes. And I taught them for 10 years. All those people, I got to rinse through looking at all these people. And so when I started looking for talent, I wasn't looking for the person that got an A, sat up front, did all of those things. I was looking and developed a certain type that actually could be successful in mortgage. Then I had to figure out, how am I going to train them? How am I going to train and develop them? But first, I needed access to them. Right? Where do you get them? I'm not going to go on Indeed. I'm not going to go on LinkedIn. I'm not going to go on one of those things and try to find them.
Bill,
I'm in charge of that.
experience was not your priority. It was more their back.
Yes. And experience was, they like people. I mean, one of the things I used to do in an interview was I'd take a piece of paper, and if you were coming in, I'd throw the piece of paper over there. And if you didn't pick it up when you came in and said, you might want, I found this on the floor, right? You probably aren't the person for me, right?
Wow,
So it was
that's
like
interesting. Never heard of that.
just little
But I never
things.
seen a piece of paper.
Just remember, right? As your CEO, you take out the trash, right? You put things in the trash, you take out the trash. You're in charge of everything. And so you want people to not only have your back, and the one thing I think that's good about when you're a leader, you've got to be vulnerable enough that your people will tell you to shut up, and you're wrong, and you take it. And that, once you get to that level, you're at a point where your business can really do some great things. And the problem sometimes is, if I want to hire Miguel and bring Miguel from his company into my ecosystem, it's very hard. Right? I'm 25% in hiring outside my business, right?
To know. Actually, that was one of my questions. You already responded. You prefer to build with instead of hiring outside.
For sure.
Now, it's no secret that retaining talent is tough, and obviously, that's one of the I would say in any industry is in today's world, retention is key, especially when you have good leaders in your. What has been your strategy to keep them?
It's actually it was is probably the key to my success. And now you see Wall Street, and so I was probably one of the first companies to actually sell to a private equity firm ever, right, in mortgage banking. I sold to DLJ. They're now Credit Suisse First Boston, but Donaldson, Lufkin, and Jen Rett were three of the founders of the stock exchange, and that is DLJ. And they bought us. They even called it back then merchant banking. So when I sold First Franklin the first time, I sold to them. So what I learned through this process was, and a little bit like what we've learned at PMG, or you learned it, when you bring in capital, a capital partner, things change. And so what I've now figured out over this time is that, in fact, my second business after First Franklin, I called Own It. And what I've learned at First Franklin and at Own It is that compensation, people basically do what you pay them to do. So if you want to retain talent, you have to pay them well. I actually pay my people very well. Almost, I would rather pay somebody twice as much as what they deserve if they are the right person, and give them administrative help and other things than I would to try to bring in other people. Because I had a wise technology person says 1 + 1 in technology sometimes equal 2. But generally, 1 + 1 + 1 equals 1.5. 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 equals 1 3/4. So it's hard to get productivity out of these masses. So what we do in keeping talent is I called it Own It. All my senior managers owned a piece of the company, right? It was a shadow option pool. We put it in an LLC, and everybody owned it. It's sort of like my own mini ESOP, where employee stock ownership plan. I want people to want to own the outcome, whether we're
That's
selling the
awesome.
business, buying the business, pleasing the customer, hiring a new person. They're interested in everything. And I
And you
think
make them
that,
your partner.
yeah, the other piece is the transparency that builds is, I mean, if we have to lay off a bunch of people because the world's going into shitter, I had a whole bunch of people telling me, hey, we got to lay off a bunch of people because the world's going into shitter. It isn't me coming out saying, hey, guys, we got to do this. And then suddenly everybody goes, oh, no. The other piece is that fives, my experience is I can hire nines and tens, right? I'm good at it. Eights, nines, and tens, let's say. But eights, nines, and tens generally hire fives, six, and sevens so they can dominate them. And so the other key is, can you hire somebody much better than you, smarter than
Right.
you, quicker than you, and still feel comfortable in your own skin and job? And I tell you, when you create a compensation plan that has long-term incentive comp as part of what people do, they don't care. They want the best people. They don't come to me and say, oh, I manage 47 people, right? I don't care. I don't care how many people you manage. I don't care how big your organization is. I'm interested in people that want to be part of a team, build a team, they're proud of the team, and they want to get paid as a result of the team. And the problem with name, image, likeness, the problem with compensation today with quarterbacks, with point guards, with stars, you just got people now getting paid $700 million, $1 billion. I mean,
Yeah.
the problem with that is you've got 25 other people that aren't getting that kind of comp, right? So you've got to manage, you've got to be able to create a team, especially at the top of your organization, to retain them, pay them well, and give them a part of the upside of what you're doing.
And give him the big, make them your partners. I think I love working with people that are at the end, you can bring them as partners. There's not better gratitude, I would say that when you have those people that you see them grow up, and they were at the beginning, they were just doing something basic, and then they start getting more responsibility, they become more accountable, and they become your partners. That's I think
Well,
that's something that
Miguel, think of the other side of Prime when you look at, remember with our stuff that we've done with Faust and DC's, what's the other side of Prime? The other side of Prime starts with bureaucracy.
yeah.
And what is that? People with tenure who don't give a shit anymore.
Right. That's
And
right.
so what I'm fighting is the government. Meaning what we
Yeah.
just voted in Trump, who I don't think many people like personally, but we voted him in, I think, because we're heading down this bureaucratic part and people don't like it. So I think in your organization, you fight tenure, yet you want it. I want people to be with me for their life, 25 years. But how do you keep them excited, engaged, and into what they're doing? And that's management, that's leadership,
Absolutely.
right?
Let's go back to in your experience. I mean, you had so much success, so many stories, but what is the one piece of advice that someone gave you throughout many years,
Mm-hmm.
that someone gave you that stuck with you?
One, I'm going to give you a sort of the David Murdoch, who had Dole and Castle and Cook. Probably he built Sherwood. He built Dole. I was on his boards. He's from Ohio. He's still alive. He's 100. I think he's 100, 101. And this is actually pretty good. He said, I said, asking you almost asked the same question. I asked him, and he said, don't have partners. And I went, well, what do you mean? He goes, because he's also been divorced 20 times. And he goes, what I've learned is that it's very hard to run a partnership because people have different views of what happens. I said, well, okay, so I get that. So if I had more money and could just be on my own, I'd be the sole proprietor running everything. But as you grow, what's the solution there? He says, make sure if you do have partners that they have more money than you have. And
Yeah.
I
Well,
thought that was
so what?
wise.
So to follow up with that, Bill, what is the ideal?
I think the ideal partner is, I mean, what are you trying to actually do in your business? You want loyalty and trust. Now we're talking about, you know, the mob or the Sinaloa
Right.
cartel or, right? What do you want more than anything? Trust. So I think what you sometimes, I would say that I would caution people that, in fact, most small businesses, 90% of businesses fail. 90. This isn't like, so when you start a new business, you should know that why are you one of the 10% that's going to be successful? And so what I tried to do was learn all the mistakes that the 90 make and try to live through them and try to build through it, and training and development, hiring from within, gaining great talent, keeping great talent, making sure you have good strategy. All those things are important. But I think when you start getting down to the secret sauce, it's making sure that you've got the right people, you've got the right strategy. And I always go to, I ask young managers, I said, what's the number one problem in a business? And it's cash.
Yeah.
You never have enough cash.
Absolutely.
And businesses suck cash. It just eats cash. And a growing business sucks more cash and eats more cash. So how can you, and the problem is when you get to a certain level, you have to have a capital partner. My businesses ended up, I grew so fast and we were doing so well that I needed a partner. Why? Because I wanted to all these guys, I look over, do you guys want to grow? They all tell me, yeah, we want to grow. Let's go. And so
Yeah.
we start we keep growing and you keep adding partners, now you've got a problem. And so how do you align interests? So what I've learned is how to align interests so that the organization can continue to be successful once you add a partner. But the number one issue in owning a business, if you look at how businesses form, it's two girls, a guy, and a dog, and they're all related. Okay, that's going to fail. That's got no fucking chance. That's
Absolutely.
got zero chance of success.
I know. I absolutely agree. Now, let me, we have only a few minutes left, but as your organization is growing, and I'm pretty sure that throughout your career, you built several organizations, several companies, and as the organization grows, it gets more complex. More, every department is growing. Have you obviously talent is key, but have you ever outsourced? Have you ever done nearshore? And what was your experience? And what would be your advice?
Yeah, we've done so like at so a couple things at CloudVerga, I outsourced all development, actual coding to Bosnia. So yeah, I've got Bosnians actually writing code here in America, right? So those are issues. Done that. Also at Finance of America, we had Manila. We had 1,000 people in Manila. Now think about that. In COVID, there's 1,000 people who were sent home and had to work from home, right? Because they couldn't come to work. So I think managing Manila and then watching us here at GDL or watching what we're doing in nearshoring. So there are some do's and don'ts, I think, in trying to use talent offshore, nearshore. And I think there's the desire for it just to be inexpensive isn't the solution. Yeah, I mean, you want it. That's why you're offshoring the thing, right? It's cheaper. But if that group isn't better trained, because now you have to have a better process, better training, better thought, all of that, because it's twice as hard to actually integrate that into the US and into the system. And what my experience has been is that most people just layer it on top. So they let offshore do certain things and then they sort of do them again in the US and they blow up the whole benefit. So I think the key is making sure that your process, well, one, that your people are trained, they understand, they have the same love and care for the organization that I've talked about the whole time, right? Everybody sees the vision, believes in it, and then then your process that you're because it's people, product, and process, right? Your process then includes them and they are integral to that process, not a ancillary component that you're going to add. And I think as you know, it has to be something that's fully integrated into the process, and that becomes very hard.
Right. Hard but doable, no?
It's
I think
doable.
that especially with nearshore, being in the same time zone and being proximity is the key, and all of those factors incorporate with the culture. I think those are have worked really well for many companies in the mortgage industry now. But let me, we are only a few minutes left to finish, but two more questions before I let you go. This is a tough one, by the way. Should a broker stay as a broker, or should a broker consider moving to becoming a bank if they can?
Well,
Should they?
yeah. I mean, I think the whole, I started as a mortgage broker and wanted to become a mortgage bank. I built my TPO business or First Franklin's business, went 100% broker. And so what I've learned in that is that it's not a it's not a one size fits all for people, right? If you want to be a sole proprietor and you want to just earn more income and have more control, there's a spot for you. But if you want to grow, my job is to help you grow. My job is to teach you how to become a mortgage bank, My job is how to help you with funding sources, warehouse lines, mortgage insurance, investor approvals, and all the things that you have to do. But it's a maturation process. And what we find is in brokers and in the brokerage business, the average mortgage broker business has 8 to 10 people in it, average, right? And there are very few that grow into what I'm going to call big mortgage banks or even a mortgage bank. So, but my goal is to anybody that wants to do it, we're there to help you do it. And we are, that's what my reps do. That's what the organization does. We're not concerned that you would leave us. There's always a spot for what we do in helping you get to where you want to go, right? And I think people like that better than, I'm just going to keep you as a broker. I'm just going to keep you as an originator. I think the interesting thing today is that, brokerage is coming back, I think, and coming out of 06, 07, and 08, it was hit pretty hard because the broker was basically blamed for all of our origination problems, right?
Yeah.
I think they didn't. I don't think most brokers do what they can do through their funding sources. No more, no less.
Bill, last question. Imagine that you have today in this room, you have a 20-year-old Bill Dallas in front of you. And what would you tell him? What would you tell your 20-year-old self?
Yeah. I would tell I have 520 something. So I have the opportunity to tell them. And what I tell them is own real estate, figure it out. It will transform your life. And you have to own, because your other option is you rent, lease, try. It's not. Find something that you love to do and do that. But search for something that can combine your passion of what you want to do. And what I think what's cool about it with my 20 something is I did it almost out of the gate and I have no regrets. Zero, right? It's been the greatest thing that's ever happened. So I think, and Miguel, you know this, we talk to all these people in our business. It's like they wind up here at Denny's. They don't, it isn't hey, I was educated, I was highly educated, this is what I want to do. I want to be a mortgage person. No. I mean, even real estate. I think I would tell people, make sure you're doing something that you really love to do. And then don't get it out of order, right? Go through education and go as far as you can. The longer you're educated, the more money you make, right? Then explore, then you've got to get a job. Try a bunch of things if you're confused, right? As to what, but work hard and try and learn from each of these jobs. But now you're at work. Then you look at family. Then you look at kids, and somewhere in there you're buying a house. If you get this out of order, if you get
Yeah.
kids back in here, or you have to be married over here, and then you have to revert. I mean, all my clients, historically bad problems because they get it out of order. So do my
Right.
children, right? Don't get it out of order. And if you do get it out of order, cut your losses fast.
Right. Right.
Right.
Well, that's an amazing advice. Bill Dallas, an amazing icon in the mortgage industry, a mover and shaker, a builder, a family man, and a great role model for many, many people out there. Thank you for your time today, Bill.
Thank you, buddy. Thanks, Miguel.
Looking forward for the next one. And everyone else, thank you for being part of this People Matter show. And we'll see you next time.
Love it. See you,
Thanks,
buddy.
Bill.